Chair Clow, we are ready.
Good evening. We'll call the June 8th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting into session. The first matter of business is roll call.
Commissioner Morondo,
Present.
Vice Chair Lawrence. Sure. Commissioner Smith. Chair Clow.
Present.
Commissioner McGee. Here. Commissioner Reland.
Here.
Commissioner Markey.
Here.
And Commissioner Lucero. Okay. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. The next matter is the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner McGee, could you lead that? The next matter is the approval of agenda. Does staff have any changes to the agenda?
Chair Clow, thank you. Yes, staff does not have any amendments to the agenda tonight.
Do commissioners, any of the commissioners have any changes to the agenda? If not,
Motion to approve.
Second.
Vice Chair Lawrence. Yes. Chair Clow. Sorry. Draw that. Commissioner McGee. Yes. Commissioner Reland.
Yes.
Commissioner Markey.
Yes.
Commissioner Lucero.
Yes.
Commissioner Morondo.
Yes.
Motion passes.
thank you. And the next matter is approval of minutes. Staff or commissioners have any changes to the May 16th, 2024 minutes?
No changes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Commissioner McGee. Yes. Commissioner Reland.
Yes.
Commissioner Markey. Commissioner Lucero.
Yes.
Commissioner Morondo.
Yes.
Vice Chair Lawrence. Motion passes.
We have no findings and conclusions to approve, or there's no old business, so we'll move on to new business. And the first matter is case number 2024-7951, which is 2768 Freya Street Certificate of Compliance. Ms. Vendetti?
Madam Chair Clow, thank you so much. Commissioners, good evening. Can you all hear me okay? Excellent. Thank you so much. So good evening, folks who have gathered here this evening. Once again, my name is Carly Vendetti. I'm a senior planner here with the Land Use Department. I'm here to present another certificate of compliance case. in this case for 2768 Agua Fria Street in the memo and also known as Lot 38. So the applicant in this case, Coldwater Development, represented by Jenkins Gavin this evening, is looking to come into compliance with legal lot of record. A quick refresher on what this means. You can read the legal definition above. Is we must prove that a lot has been legally subdivided according to Chapter 14-7.3. In order to bring something into compliance, there's a couple ways to do that. You can do that commonly through pre-code plats or surveys, warranty deeds describing the property in its current configuration, a plat of survey with city signatures that are all recorded with the county, or through the partition method, also a certificate of compliance, either administratively or like the one here this evening. So to dig into the case of 2768 Agua Fria, it was annexed from the county in 1966 as part of a larger tract, 241.7 acres known as the Seiler Road area. Going back as far as we can see, before our aerial photos get a little bit too fuzzy, this is 1951 in this case, it's been a vacant lot. It's about adjacent to Tumbleroot Distillery as a common monument on that road. So previously, as this was vacant, it was also owned by the Bureau of Land Management as part of Section 33, Tract 17, North Range 9 East. However, as you can see here on the plat that was prepared in 1995, there is a public notice that states the following. This survey is based on those recorded documents noted hereon. City of Santa Fe staff must approve all documents submitted with an application for a building permit and may require submittal of additional documentation to prove legal lot of record. When the agent and city staff attempted to track down the reference documents listed on this plat, we were unsuccessful. There were also additional efforts to approve this administratively. That was also unsuccessful. So we went and did this by exclusion, or at least we attempted to, until we noticed that instruments known as lots 28, 30, and 35 were either altered or not legally conforming, just as lot 38 was. So to expand a little bit on lots 28, 30, and 35, they were represented by post-code deeds, and upon further research, the configuration of lots 30 and 35, recognized here in the orange on the eastern side, were altered. So when we look at lot 38, we're not necessarily granting it a certificate of compliance and making these other nonconformities legal. It would only make their western boundary legal and therefore help them in the future get legal lot of record themselves if they so choose. Finally, looking at the dimensions of lot 38, we can see that it's not creating any nonconformities or exacerbating any because it's a vacant lot. Current dimensional standards include a lot size of 4.12 acres. The zoning is mixed use, and all future development will be required to comply with Chapter 14 and subsequent amendments. So with that, there will be the need for one motion in this case. And as the case planner, I recommend approval. At this time, Madam Chair, I invite any questions.
Are there any clarifying questions at this point in time? Okay, if not, we'll move on to Ms. Jenkins.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, if you could give us just a moment, we need Xavier to come back to administer the oath. He's here.
My apologies for the delay. Please raise your right hand. State your name and address for the record. Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth, nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury? Ms. Jenkins has been sworn in, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Ms. Jenkins, sorry to interrupt you. I think the mic might not be picking you up. Is it on? Okay. Okay.
Let it go.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Jenkins with Jenkins Gavin here on behalf of the applicant. I don't have anything to add. Carly's done a great job in putting the application materials together and presenting the relevant facts. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have and just appreciate your support of the request. Thank you.
Any questions from commissioners? If not, we'll move to the public comment portion. Anyone from the public here to comment on this matter? Anyone on Zoom?
Before I say no, I would like to make sure that folks on Zoom know to raise their hand if they would like to speak. Just give one moment to see if anybody raises their hand. No, Chair Clow.
Thank you. So at this point, we will close the public comment section and move to the commission. Any comments from the commissioners? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve case 2024-7951. Certificate of compliance for 2760 Agua Fria Street.
Commissioner Reland,
Yes.
Commissioner Markey,
Yes.
Commissioner Luciano,
Yes.
Commissioner Morondo,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Lawrence,
Yes.
and Commissioner McKee.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We'll now move on to case number 2024-7750 and case number 2024-7751 is Meridian Las Solanas Medical Center sign area variance is case number 7750 and 7751 is Meridian Los Solares Medical Center sign height variance. Ms. Moore, you're presenting tonight?
Yes, Chair Clow, I am presenting on behalf of Janice Boletnikoff, our senior planner, our newest senior planner. She is taking a little bit of time off to celebrate her 20th wedding anniversary. So we wish her and her family well, and I'm happy to present in her place. I'm just gonna mess with the plug here and hopefully the presentation will come up. So I did email it. Oh. Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Carly. Okay. I don't know if Heather, you can remove that panel on the right. I'm not sure where that's coming up from. But, or if is it obscuring? I actually don't think it's obscuring the presentation. Yes, thank you. Sorry for the delay there. Yeah, I am here tonight to present on behalf of Janice Boletnikoff for the Meridian Los Solares Medical Center sign variances. We have two variances to consider this evening, case 2024-7750 and 7751 variances to the sign ordinance for overall sign area allowance and sign height allowance. The property in question was annexed as part of the Los Solares annexation in 2009 and is within the Los Solares master plan, which was also approved in 2009. The yellow arrow, or star, which kind of shows up, gives you a general location for the property in question. And then as we zoom in a little bit closer, The legal lot of record for this parcel was established in 2019 through a lot split of the larger parcel, tract 18. So this is now tract 18B. And the subject parcel is both legal and conforming. And you may recall back in September of 2022, the Planning Commission approved a development plan for the Meridian office building on this piece of land and associated infrastructure, parking improvements. The no variances were requested at the time of the development approval, and the applicant has chosen 3 signs, 2 wall-mounted signs and one on the north elevation and one on the south elevation, facing I-25 and facing Beckner, and then a monument sign out front on Beckner for their sign program. And again, the variances requested are to the allowable total sign area. So the code allows an applicant up to 150 square feet of sign area. The applicant is requesting a variance to allow for 169.26 square feet, an amount in excess of just over 19 square feet among the 3 signs. And they're requesting a variance to the height standards of the sign ordinance to allow placement of wall-mounted signs at a height of 41 feet 3 inches, where 25 feet is allowed in excess of a little over 16 feet. Our review finds that the required approval criteria for a variance to the sign ordinance has not been satisfied for either of the variance requests, and staff recommends denial of the sign area variance for case 2024-7750, and staff recommends denial of the sign height variance for case 2024-7751. As you consider the variance to the sign ordinance, please consider the purpose and intent of the sign ordinance, which is to establish a comprehensive and balanced system of sign control that accommodates the need for a well-maintained, safe, and attractive environment within the city, and the need for effective communications, including business identification, as well as generally promoting the health, safety, and general welfare and aesthetics of the city through reasonable regulations. Further, signs are to be integrated with and harmonious to the surrounding environment. The sign ordinance provides for the reasonable efficiency of signs for wayfinding while protecting the character of the area of Santa Fe as a community. This is contemplating the drafting of the sign ordinance and is why the C2 zone district, which this property is within, accommodates larger buildings and already has a sign limit that is significantly higher than most other zone districts within the city. Again, staff has found that the applicant has not met the approval criteria to receive a variance to the sign ordinance. This diagram was also included as well as all the images in your staff report and attachments for the property. This illustrates the site topography, this elevation. On the far left, you'll see the I-25 corridor, a berm that was likely created during the construction of I-25, and then the kind of natural sloping topography of the site down to where the building, which is currently under construction, it exists now on the lot, and then down to Beckner Road at the bottom. Also, images here show you the sunken terraced area, which the applicant chose to create on the site to provide for what I understand is a potential, additional outdoor space for both the employees and the patients of the facility. And this, is about 14 feet below the grade there. Okay, so this slide shows you the proposed sign designs. They have proposed, as I said, 2 wall-mounted signs at about 72 square feet. And then they have a monument sign to be placed out on Beckner Road. Just to note, we calculate the area of the monument sign not by the base, but just by the sign itself there. The north elevation of the structure is viewed off of Beckner Road here in an image. And you can clearly see the 3 full stories of the building under construction. Also, just want to note that either out of an abundance of optimism or perhaps hubris, the applicant has already placed the wall-mounted sign brackets at the requested height of 41 feet 3 inches, which is about 16 feet higher than the code allows, as shown in the diagram there as well. Along the south elevation of the building, you can clearly see the building finish grade, and again, the brackets for where the applicant would like your permission to place their sign. So to get to the variance approval criteria, section 14.316C1, in order to grant a variance, the Land Use Board, the Planning Commission, shall make the following findings per subsection 14.36C1 as follows. So 1 or more of the following A through D special circumstances shall apply. That there is an unusual physical characteristic that exists that distinguish the land or the structure from others in the vicinity and that are subject to the same relevant provisions of Chapter 14. B, that the parcel is either legal nonconforming, lot created prior to the adoption of the regulation from which the variance is sought. C, there is inherent conflict in the applicable regulations that cannot be resolved by compliance with a more restrictive provision as provided in section 14.17. And D, that the land or structure is non-conforming and has been designated as a landmark or contributing or significant property. Our response to these criteria is that there is no unusual physical characteristics that exist on this land to distinguish it or the structure. None of the required circumstances exist. The subject parcel was vacant prior to this office building. That is any hardship that is therefore self-imposed by the applicant and their design choices. The proposed use for the structure and the specific specialized wayfinding needs of its customers for that particular use cannot be considered as inherent unique physical characteristics of the site or the building. B, the parcel is not legal nonconforming. We've already established that. It is legal and conforming. The only thing nonconforming would be the sign variance if it was granted. There is no current conflict in the regulation, and the structure is not a landmark or a pre-existing historical structure. So item 2, the special circumstances make it infeasible for reasons other than financial cost to develop the property in compliance with the standards of Chapter 14. Staff's response is that there is no special physical circumstance of the property that makes it infeasible to develop the property in compliance with the area and the height standards of the code of the sign code. The subject parcel is large, it is regularly shaped, it is relatively flat. The sliding scale approach that is suggested by the applicant, where a larger building would allow a larger sign, is neither allowed nor considered under the sign ordinance. You're simply allowed 150 square feet. Variance criteria 3, the intensity of the development shall not exceed that which is allowed on other properties in the vicinity and that are subject to the same relevant provisions of Chapter 14. Staff's response on this is that the level of intensity, that is the overall height, size, and visual impacts proposed by the applicant is greater than that which is allowed by our code on other nearby properties. These standards apply to other properties that are zone C2 in the district. Exceeding the height limit by 16 feet 3 inches is a significant increase in intensity. Additionally, that allowing greater impact here could encourage other nearby office buildings or medical buildings or other uses that are allowed in the C2 district to request the same variances. Variance criteria 4. The variance is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land or structure. And in considering this, the following factors shall be considered. whether the property has been or could be used without variances for a different category or lesser intensity of use. Consistency with the purpose and intent of Chapter 14, with the purpose and intent of the articles and sections from which the variance is granted, and with the applicable goals and policies of the general plan. Staff's response is that the applicant has produced no evidence to show that the requested deviation is the minimum amount of area or height needed in order to make use of the property. The applicant has selected a certain sign program, but there are many other options that could be considered. Staff considers this a design problem, not a variance issue. The applicant has not considered all the potential sign design solutions, or has chosen the sign program that's before you today. And we believe that there are other sign solutions that could comply with the code standards. Additionally, so some of these, reducing the size of the wall-mounted signs by just 9.63 feet each would eliminate the need for the area variance and bring them into conformity with the 150 square feet. Placing the signs at the code required height would still be visible on both sides of the north and south elevations, as is a concern. The C2 zone districts already provide greater sign area and height placement than other districts due to the anticipated uses and wayfinding needs of the various uses in the C2 district. The proposed area and height are counter to the purpose and intent of the sign ordinance, especially regarding character, aesthetics, and the harmonious integration into the surrounding environment, which were all considered when the ordinance was adopted. Variance criteria 5. The variance is not contrary to the public interest. While effective wayfinding is in the public interest, especially when navigating to commercial buildings, such as those that are allowed in the C2 district, this is why the C2 district already allows for larger and higher signs than in other districts in the city. And allowing more intense signage for both area and height does adversely affect the aesthetics of the area and is contrary to the public interest. Just a note on variances, physical characteristics versus proposed uses. Variances are granted because of inherent existing physical characteristics of land or structures. They should not be granted to proposed uses or structures or impermanent uses. Physical characteristics are permanent and exist on the land or within existing structures, such as a historic building, not newly designed structures. Variances are not granted for uses or situations that are easily changed, but only for cases when permanent attributes burden landowners. Imagine a lot with only 30% slopes or a historical structure that existed on the property, not self-imposed hardships. For comparisons, although nearby properties can be considered regarding the intensity of development, greater intensity cannot be granted. Development on other lots cannot be considered. The code requires that each parcel is judged solely on its own physical characteristics. As such, staff finds that the required approval criteria for granting a variance to the sign ordinance has not been satisfied for either of these requests. Staff recommends denial of the sign variance for area for case 2024-750, and staff recommends denial of the sign height variance for case 2024-7751. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Moore.
Thank you.
Do any commissioners have questions, clarifying questions of Ms. Moore? If not, we'll move on to the applicant's presentation.
And please raise your right hand. State your name and address for the record.
Brian Nenninger, 2213 Brothers Road, number 18, Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury?
I do.
Applicant has been sworn in, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Brian Nenninger and I work for Orion West, which is representing the applicant tonight. The applicant of this project is Meridian Property Company, and they're the group that's developed this project. So we'll go in and I'm going to go through the background of the project and give you a little bit more information. And of course, you know, we have some thoughts on these variances and the criteria as well. So just to refresh everybody, so you've seen the project because obviously you approved the development plan. This is a medical office building and clinic. There's 3 stories. It's 92,400 square feet. You can see to the right, there's the linear accelerator, which will be used for radiation treatments, which is in the building now, as we're looking forward to opening up in July. Our first patient we're planning for is in July 22nd. So it's kind of exciting time. It is a C2 district, as Maggie had mentioned, and it's an 18-acre parcel. The developer was Meridian Property Company, and I think most of you know about Meridian, but they do high-quality, full-service healthcare projects in the Western United States. Okay, I'm just going to talk quickly about this, and then at the end of the presentation, I'm going to have Dr. Herbert and Dr. Voltura come up and talk more about the practice and the patients. But this is a really important part, and I'm not sure how many people know, but Nexus Health is the tenant and the group that's operating in this building, which will provide oncology services, among other things. Very similar to the Christus Center that's under construction now. So let's get reoriented again on where the project is. So that red arrow is the parcel 18B, and the office building is sort of in the center of that area. And I think it's important to note, as you look at the strip between Beckner Road and I-25 from Richards back to Cerrillos, this area is all pretty much for commercial uses. It's either zone C1, C2, VIP, or mixed use. So the intention for that is to be built out for a variety of commercial uses versus the residential that's north of that site. I think it's also important to note that just about a mile down the road, plus minus, is the Presbyterian Hospital, and also nearby it is Presbyterian Medical Services, which those two are not affiliated. You can go to the website and look at the website, and it specifically says that we are not affiliated with the hospital. And so I just want to point that out. That'll become a little bit important later. The other thing that's worth noting is that we'll look at a real quick video clips of moving along I-25, both northbound and southbound. There's a large bermed area right here on the southbound lane, just north of that area, that conceals a significant portion of the building. And the developers took advantage of slope to appropriately screen a 3-story building that looks much more like a 1 to 2-story building from I-25. Okay, what are we asking for? This is the building, and this is basically the north elevation, which faces Beckner Road. This building is roughly 200 feet off of Beckner Road. And then below is the south elevation, which faces I-25. And so the yellow area is important to consider, and because we've introduced something we're calling apparent grade. And it is a unique characteristic of this facility in that we could have basically not excavated any space at all in front of the building, just had dirt going all the way up, covering the full first floor. But instead we chose to set it up as a retreat, a garden, as Maggie referred to, for our patients and healthcare providers to have a place to go to. I also want to point out, if you look at the size of the sign compared to the building, it's barely proportionate. So again, at 72.63 feet, there's not, it's not an obvious or offensive sign in any way. Let's see, I do want to point out one more thing. When we look at these, considering again this idea of apparent grade, the space between the top of the sign on the south side facing I-25 down to that point of what you apparently see as presents as a two-story building is 27 feet 1 inch versus the 25 we're talking about. But if you measure all the way to the bottom, which is currently what the code is set up to do, then you get the 41 feet 3 inch dimension. So I think this in some ways, again, is a unique experience or a unique circumstance that the code does not consider. So as we look at the site plan, again, trying to articulate these ideas, you can see the north building sign facing Beckner. I think, is my cursor moving around up there? I'm not sure I'm seeing it. Are you guys seeing a cursor? So if you look in the upper left, it says building sign north. So that's the first building sign. And then if you look in the lower right, building sign south, that is the second building sign. And if you kind of observe the area in yellow, that is the area that basically is at grade with the second floor. So this building sets up, if any of you are familiar with the Midwest, as a walkout basement, is how it would normally be. But again, we've excavated this terraced area so that there's a place for patients to be able to have a place to go along with physicians and healthcare providers. So in addition to the two building signs, we also have a very small monument sign of 24 square feet. And this again is about wayfinding off of Beckner Road. So you can kind of see the scale with the gentleman sitting here. It's about 5 feet high and the sign itself is 8 foot wide. And it's located right here off of this sidewalk that accesses the Beckner Road. So if we get into the dimensions of the site, the topography of the site, and again, without my cursor, I'm just going to try to guide you a little bit through the different colors and dimensions of grade here. If you look at the yellow is basically under what is current grade, finished grade after the project is complete. The green is previous grade. So you can see on the south side of the property that the existing or finished grade, that the finished grade closely followed existing grade. And then as we got to where the building is, we started pulling that grade away so that we could drop the building down and again, give it better screening when you consider I-25. The cut that you see through there in the red is one of the highest points for this berm. So if you kind of look over to the very far right, that little line is pointing down. That's basically the southbound lane for I-25. So at that particular point, you'll see in the videos that we look at, the car going in that direction will lose the building. I think the other thing that we wanted to point out is that the red line is the line we would call apparent grade. So we're going to go to a little bit of a blow up so we can see this a little bit better. So again, just kind of talking about this idea of apparent grade, you can see where the garden is, it's in green. And again, if we would have filled that area up all the way to the building, then our request for this south elevation of the building would be significantly less. So as we look at this photograph, I want to point out one thing. There is a mistake. And on the top photograph, it shows 27 feet from this apparent grade line. It's actually 27 feet 1 inch for the application. And then if we look at the bottom, we put the grade at true grade and measure up 25 feet, and you can see where the sign would end up. So why is that? when we look at medical buildings, and I think you've heard some of this testimony in the past when you talked and heard the cancer center, there is quite a ventilation and mechanical equipment requirement. Code sign variance or the code sign ordinance hasn't been updated in many years. And at the time that this was all done, a typical floor plate would have been 12 feet. This building floor plate's 14 feet. And so once you start putting in windows in a way that's proportionate and works for the humans that are using the building and the inside, things start to get restricted and just don't work out well. So you can see again, this is what would happen if it was per code, and this is what we're proposing. Okay, I'm going to just quickly give do the drive-by from I-25 so you can get the perspective. Sorry here, pull this up real quick. Okay, first we're going to go northbound. So northbound is the approach is the furthest away from the building. So you can see the building coming into view. You can see the rail runner tracks. It's not going. Sorry. Let's change this and figure this out. So let's try this again. So the building's just starting to come into view. And you're seeing it as a one-story building. And as you move along, that perspective never changes. So the point here is that if we also install the sign per code, you never see it. You never find it. There would be, no way for patients and people that need to get to this building to understand where it is. So we'll also do the same thing. We'll just go southbound. If I can do it right out of it. We're not going to do that. Try this again. All right. So now we're going southbound. You can start to see the building come into focus. This is quite a bit more of the building. Presents as a second-story building, a two-story building. So as you kind of go by the building, it pretty much stays two-story all the way. And then as you get to that berm that I was talking about earlier, it goes away. Okay, back to the presentation. Technology. Here we go. So this is the north elevation that faces Beckner Road. And we show the code elevation or where the sign would be if we did it per code. And then we also show it as we're requesting. Again, if you look at the size of the sign and the shape of the sign, if you're trying to find the building, it's not out of line. So I want to go back, and Maggie also had this intent in her presentation. So the key things for us as we look at this is effective communication, promoting health and safety, general welfare, and then also the safe. Those are also important, and we're trying to balance these things out. Further, we've done some research on what the Planning Commission has granted in the past, what the city of Santa Fe has supported in the past. And when it comes to healthcare, there's a pattern. Effective signage is really critical in promoting these health and safety and general welfare concepts. And this is what medical facilities are all about. But I think the second bullet is what's important. The city, including this Planning Commission, has recognized that a building's use in providing medical services is an important and relevant consideration in various applications, including signs. This relevance most recently came up in various criteria that was considered for approving a building height for a building that was in a hospital zone. So I want to go through 4 cases to just kind of back up that point. The first one is the St. Vincent Physicians Medical Center. This is on 2990 Rodeo Park Road. It's at St. Francis and I-25 in that northwest corner. And what's allowed in this area, which is a BIP zone, are 3 signs at 150 square feet with no one sign greater than 150. This particular sign in this particular building complies with that in terms of area. But then the second requirement is the max, similar to us, is 25 feet. And this building, the sign height is 33. This is not associated or on a hospital campus. It is a medical office building providing services. The second example, and there are many in the Christus Regional Medical Center, and we all know where this is at the corner of Hospital Drive in St. Mike's. 2 signs are allowed in a C1 district at 32 square feet. That's the combined total. So what was granted was 2 signs, 80 square feet, totaling 160 square feet. So this is well beyond what's allowed by code. So again, medical use matters. And this is not establishing a new precedent. This is just talking about what's already been offered as an existing precedent. So in this case, the sign height allowed is 15 feet. What was granted, there were 2 different heights, one at 37 and one at 46. The next example I want to go to is the Presbyterian Medical Services. And this particular building was the one I called out earlier, that if you look at the website, it specifically says that this facility is not associated with the Presbyterian Hospital. Now this is in a C1 zone again, and there are 2 signs, 32 square feet combined allowed. What was recently granted were 3 signs at 150 square foot total combined. So there were no variance requested with height. So talk about that. So the last example, which is again just a mile away from our project, is the Presbyterian Hospital. So this is at 4801 Beckner Road. It's in an HC zoning district hospital, and they're allowed 2 signs at 32 square feet combined. And we only kind of called out and are looking at the 3, what they're calling identification of development signs. And these were, the variance that was granted was 295 square feet each, totaling 885 square feet. There was also over an additional 15 signs that receive various heights and area variances as well. You can see that the height allowed is 15. What was granted was 65. Now, fortunately, and this next slide will show that, although they had those variances, they didn't use them in that same capacity. So this is what was actually built on the top slide as compared to our project. So I'm just looking now at the signs in the photo, what they are. So as you look at the photo on the top, this Presbyterian hospital sign is 196 square feet and approximately 41 feet tall. And I want to just compare that a mile down the road, Nexus Health in a C2 zoning district at 72.63 square feet and 41 feet 3 inches. And this is a good comparison. This is a good proportional comparison. Again, we're not submitting or trying to start a new precedent for commercial buildings in C2 districts. We're talking about medical use and wayfinding for patients, sick patients, elderly patients, stressed patients. So what I want to do now is turn the presentation over to Dr. Herbert, who will talk about the practice itself in more detail. And then we'll also have Dr. Voltura, who will talk about the patients that are coming to this building. And it's important, again, with our premise that this is a medical facility. This is different. This is one of 3 major medical facilities that will be in northern New Mexico offering significant services.
Please raise your right hand. Please state your name and address for the record.
33 Spirit Court.
You solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury?
I do.
Dr. Herbert has been sworn in, Madam Chair.
Good evening. Thank you. You have to excuse me. I've never done one of these before. I can promise you that there was not a degree of hubris in this entire project, just to start off. We're a group of community physicians that have sought to keep this community in mind and foremost through every bit of this project. We understand that hospitals are important. We support both hospitals, but we realize that medicine is primarily an outpatient-based specialty at this point. Hospitals are great when you need them, but outpatient services are where most people get their care. We tried to accomplish several goals with Nexus Health. We wanted to make sure that good providers stayed in Santa Fe and northern New Mexico. We wanted to be able to attract other specialties and good providers from outside of the area. And we were focused on cost of care. And I won't get into the minutia of medical billing, but outpatient care is several $100% cheaper than inpatient hospital-based care. And I realize that this is being called a medical office building, but this has really turned into the third medical center in Santa Fe. We have over 40 providers at this point representing 13 different specialties. Our facility has an MRI, a PET scanner, interventional radiology, a chemotherapy suite for cancer patients, a linear accelerator. All of these different specialties, including primary care. And our goal is to make sure that our patients are seen in a timely manner. Everything can happen in the center. And our goal, very honestly, is to keep our patients out of the emergency room. Same day visits, doing as much as we can so that patients stay healthy and stay out of the hospital. And that's, we believe, the way medicine should be practiced. You'll hear from some of my colleagues tonight and some of our patients. Santa Fe is the primary referral destination for all of New Mexico, or all of northern New Mexico. I treat patients all the way up until the Colorado border and in southern Colorado. Sometimes my patients are seen weekly. Sometimes they're able to drive. Sometimes they need drivers. Sometimes they alternate drivers. And a huge portion of our northern New Mexico patients are intimidated about the fact that they have to come to Santa Fe for care. Those specialties just don't exist in Taos and Las Vegas and Raton. They have to travel for their care. And it is a bit stressful. We've sought to create a medical campus here that offers all of these specialties and is a welcoming, easy place for our patients to find. And I believe that the signage here is aligns with that vision. We don't have inpatient beds, but we would like to eventually build a surgery center. We want to see our patients same day. We perform urgent care services, if you want to call it that, on all of our patients, because if you call and you're sick, you get a visit, you get a lab, you get imaging, and you get seen that same day without a $2,000 emergency room charge. So I would hope that you guys view the project with the same importance as we do. That again, this is not a doctor's office. This is a medical center, and we are focused on outpatient care, but I can do way more in an outpatient setting, more efficiently, faster, and less cost than you could have ever imagined. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dr. Herbert. I'm going to ask that you refrain from clapping. It's not appropriate at a public hearing. Thank you.
So I'll just introduce Dr. Voltura, who will talk about the patients.
So
You'll need to be sworn in first. Please state your name and address for the record.
Ms. Anna Voltura, 802 East Palace Avenue, Santa Fe.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury?
Yes.
The doctor has been sworn in, Madam Chair.
Thank you all for giving us the opportunity to say a few words tonight. I'm a local, born and raised Santa Fean who chose to stay here in Santa Fe and practice. I've been in practice since 1998. I'm emphasizing that because I've seen a lot of our patients throughout the years have difficulties traveling from outside of Santa Fe. We see a lot of patients, at least about 25% of our patients from northern New Mexico. But last week I saw a patient from Las Cruces and I saw 2 from Albuquerque. So that just gives you an idea that we do see patients, not just from Santa Fe, northern New Mexico, but from around the state. When I was asked to come up and talk a little bit about our patients, I think all of you understand either from your own experience or family members or friends that when you're going through any type of illness, even if some people think it's not a big deal, if it's fracturing your leg or if you're going to see one of our pain specialists, or if you have a new cancer diagnosis, it can all be very frightening and upsetting and distracting in a lot of ways when you're traveling and trying to find where you're going to. When Scott asked me if I could say a few words, I thought about what's the best way to emphasize what I've seen over the years happening with patients that get lost. And we see it every day, all day long, patients coming hour and a half late. I wanted to just relay a story that while it's a little bit of an extreme story, I think it does kind of relay what we experience on a daily basis. I had a 70-year-old woman from Taos with a new diagnosis of breast cancer, and her husband was driving her down. And the office I was in at the time, we had previously had a great sign that was up at the top. We were off of St. Michael's, and with the Santa Fe winds, the sign had gotten blown off. So they were about an hour and a half late. About an hour into being late, they called the receptionist. She had to guide them in. They finally got there. They were upset. They thought I wouldn't see them. Of course we did. The husband dropped the wife off, went, because they had brought their 2 dogs with them, went off to take the dogs out and get something to eat. And come close to 5 o'clock, and he dropped her off around 3, he still wasn't back. Well, very long story short, he was in a car accident. He had rolled over, and unfortunately, very true story, one of their pets had died in the car accident. And when he finally got back to pick her up, they had to rent a car. And of course, he was very upset, but he did relay after we calmed him down after a bit that part of the reason he felt that he'd gotten in the car accident is, I think part of the reason he was telling us his story is he wanted us to attest to the police, to the insurance, et cetera, as to why he'd gotten in the car accident. Because he felt that it was his fault. Anyway, he had brought on that, he was extremely nervous, upset, distracted, not only because of his wife's diagnoses, but also because they had such a difficult time finding our place. While that's a very extreme story, we all, my colleagues and myself, have very similar stories and understand the importance to making sure that our patients can find us. While a lot of our patients are older, many are younger. So I don't think it's really an age thing. I think anybody that's coming to see the doctor for any reason is going to be very anxious. Some of them are quite frankly fearful that they're going to be dying. Some of them drive themselves because they don't want their families to know what they're going through, or maybe they don't have family or friends to bring them. So with all these varying different, situations that our patients have, I think all of my colleagues and myself who have shared very, very similar stories all agree that signage is extremely important for them to find their way. I think all of you being from Santa Fe know that local people, we're not very good about knowing streets. We tend to use, in Santa Fe, we tend to use landmarks. And instead of saying, this, where the particular street is, we'll say, oh, go by La Fonda and go 2 streets down. And so we do everything by landmarks. And I bring that up because I think that is important, not only, bringing up the previous story about patients that come from out of town, but local patients as well. I don't think that it's always easy to find places, even if you're a local Santa Fean. So that's all I really wanted to say, and thank you all for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you.
So I'll just finish up the presentation with 2 more slides. Let me see if I can get this going again. I'm not sure why we're not connecting. Let's try one more time. Oh, there we go. Good. Thank you. Okay, so I just wanted to follow up. So a couple of things that I think are probably worth mentioning. We are respectfully asking that the Planning Commission approve these variances. And the approval criteria we have below is basically a summary of what we provided in our application. But I think it's just key and critical that medical use is part of the physical characteristic. It's just been done over and over and over with these particular facilities, not commercial buildings that are not medical related, but ones that are of this scale producing this level of service to the community. And that's, everybody can do their own research, but that's just the way it's kind of gone. I'd also say in terms of infeasibility, the limited sign area really runs contrary. So this is not about balancing. This is about getting out of balance with what the intent of the sign ordinance is. And it does run contrary to health and safety and the general welfare of these patients. Intensity really is not affected one way or the other. At C2, we built a 45-foot tall building. It's 92,000 square feet. It's fairly large. I'd also say that over time, as I pointed out, that little beltway running between Richards and Cerrillos and Beckner and the interstate is going to be built out, and there'll be more commercial buildings and there'll be more things going on there. And it's going to get harder to see where you're going and what's going on when those structures come along, and they will, as we know. So as you also, I'm just going to jump down to the minimum necessary. So at 72.63 square feet, you saw what that looked like on the building. It does not jump out at you in any way, shape, or form. The actual sign area is less than 0.6% when you compare the entire area of the building. And this is definitely not contrary to the public interest. And of course, this is the slides that are particular to the area. And just looking at the next one with looking at the height, similar arguments are being made, with the difference being that, especially when you look at the south face and you consider what the building, how it really presents, the true impact that we're talking about is only a couple of feet off of what the code allows. And I think everybody here probably knows that the land use director has the authority to grant a 1-foot variance. So if it's 26, he could have done that. So we're very close to where that should be in terms of context and appropriate height. Now, understanding that on the north side it's taller, but that's the area where all the patients are coming from. And you can see the top of this building over by Lowe's. You're coming down Cerritos trying to figure out where you're at. You have a chance to actually see that there's something out there. There's a sign there. If we drop it, we're not going to see that. So that concludes our presentation. We're ready to stand, of course, for questions.
Do the commissioners have any questions of the applicant? Commissioner Lucero.
Thank you, Chair Clow. I'm curious as to what these signs will look like at night. I mean, obviously you say that they'll be illuminated, and I have an idea of what the signs on the building might look like backlit. I'm curious as to what the sign on Beckner Road will look like, how it will be illuminated. Will it be like the full sign or just the letters?
The letters only, and they'll be LED based. And that particular sign is a little less than 100 lumens per square foot. And 100 lumens is like 10 watts. So in the winter, when sun goes down early, there'll be people working in the building, and there's 1,000 square foot plus of windows, and they'll be lit. And it's no more than what you'd see through those natural windows and natural light. I shouldn't say natural because I'm sorry, the lights are on. So, but that's kind of it's not going to be jumping out at you in that way, shape, or form. And the applicant is willing, if there is issues or trouble, we can look at dimmers and different other methods to take care of that, but I don't think that it'll be an issue.
I have one other question. The graded area to the south of the building, that's in yellow on these diagrams. That's going to be a parking lot, right? That's my understanding.
That is correct. It's a parking lot.
Will that be? I imagine that'll be lit. And will that be lit all night, or what's the plan there?
Right now, the plan is for it to be lit, per the city code requirements. So, no more than 1 lumen per square foot, I think is the way it works. There's no bleed over to the other lights in the area, but that is the plan at the moment.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Commissioner Markey.
I have a follow-up question on the lighting. So will the sign lighting be deactivated when the building is closed, and the same with the parking lot?
So I think from a liability and safety issue, the parking lights or the parking will be on. There'll be people in that building at late hours, and there'll be a short window time when people aren't there. With regard to the sign, we would have some options there that we'd be willing to consider. Again, I don't, I think there is concern and valid concern that a sign's going to be super bright. It's going to be a spotlight out there like the bat signal or something of that nature, but it won't be that type of light. But at the same time, we would be willing to look at those options.
Any other questions? Mr. Morondo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In regards to the lighting of the sign, they're all internally lit, is that right?
That is correct. Yeah, it's all from inside.
Was particularly for the monument sign, was an up-facing ground or landscape light considered instead of internally lit?
I think that could be a possibility. I don't know if they considered that as an approach. But I mean, again, I think we would have some ability to be flexible with that sign.
You talked about the area that was shown lower below grade as a garden. Is that permitted as such? Is that part of what was permitted and built?
Yes, it is in the landscaping plan. And there's quite a bit of generous landscaping in that area, both hardscape and plantings. And that was all part of the program. I don't know that has been, right now people use it as a retreat garden, healing garden. I'm sure when the facility is open and running, it'll have a more formal name, and there's definitely wayfinding to get there from in the building. It's actually quite a nice space. I think it was a good move. It didn't start out that way. It did start out as the walkout basement approach. The Sky Bridge wasn't cheap, the little bridge that we used from the parking lot to the building, but it was felt like that was the whole thing was, did cost some dollars, but I think it was well worth it to make it a better amenity, a better building, a better project.
Any other questions? You ready for a motion? Very sorry. Moving this along. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to comment on this matter? If so, there's a number of you, if you could come up, down over by the podium. And we'll limit the comments to 2 minutes. Please try not to be repetitive.
Please state your name and address for the record and raise your right hand. Please state your address. You solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury.
Sir, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I'm not sure if the mic's on. I just want to make sure that we're picking you up. Got it. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I live down, I have a business down at, from the, building that they are involved with right now. And I just wanted to get involved, and I'm very selfish about this because I'm one of the cancer patients. And they, about signs. And I built Santa Fe Brewery, I built Knuckles Brewery, I'm involved with other businesses, and I understand the planning commission and I understand about signs. I think, in my opinion, if you drive down on the highway and you look at that building, I think we should have, this is a cancer center. And you don't understand it till you have cancer, how important this is. This is not a hamburger stand or some kind of a business or smoke shop. This is a cancer center, and I think aesthetically, the signs that they are posing right now, if you really look at the surrounding and you look at the landscape, aesthetically pleasing for that building to have the sign up there. And I think we should, when we drive down the street, it's easy to find. Now, I remember when they moved into the new building, Nexus, and I was trying to find it behind the post office. And I was driving up and down, and they had some Mickey Mouse signs on the side of the curb, and I missed it because of the UPS truck was in front of me. So I think we should have the sign. That's all I care about, is to be approved. The doctors are here, are really good doctors. I would like to see this thing to be aesthetically pleasing, because there's other people who are interested in coming in from California. I have some doctor friends. I have some nurses that relatives came here from Florida, and you understand how shortage we have. And I want to have these doctors to be utmost, and whatever we could do for them to make sure that they don't leave. And not only that, but my daughter gonna be a cancer doctor, and I just don't want her to move anyplace else. I want her to stay here and work there. So anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank
Let
you.
me tell you, you guys have a tough job. It's hard to sit up there and listen to this.
Please raise your right hand. State your name and address for the record.
Warren Goldenberg, 12 Serrato Drive.
You solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury.
I do.
Mr. Goldberg has been sworn in, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I'll just make some brief comments. I am the sole operator and owner of El Dorado Family Health. It's a primary care clinic up in El Dorado.
And we are planning to merge fairly soon with Nexus. So my little clinic is probably going to bring, mostly from El Dorado and from the outlying areas, about 2,000 patients for primary care to Nexus. I would say the majority of my patients are senior citizens. And I'm extremely concerned about them being able to come and find their clinic and get to it on a timely fashion and get the care that they need. It took them years to find my clinic in El Dorado. So, I'm very, very concerned about that. If you can imagine, a couple thousand senior citizens driving up Beckner, not being able to find the facility and driving around the neighborhoods out there because it's a pretty densely populated residential area. I think it's bad for them, for the residents, and definitely not good for the patients. Also, I think to consider the fact, Dr. Herbert had mentioned the development of the area. When you come down that I-25 corridor from St. Francis to Cerrillos, there's right now 4 large buildings, including the Nexus building, the apartment building next to the outlet mall. And I don't know how anyone would tell which building is which without signage on the buildings. And for a senior patient who does not use technology necessarily, doesn't use their GPS on their cell phone, who's sick, as Dr. Voltura mentioned, and stressed out, trying to drive around and find that facility is going to be really difficult. If you can imagine yourselves coming for a radiation treatment or chemo treatment, and the first problem you have is a barrier to care, other than finances and everything else, is signage. I don't think that should be a barrier to care. I think should be assisting the patients. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please raise your right hand and state your name and address for the record. You solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury. Ms. Jeffs has been sworn in, Madam Chair.
I'm a patient and a colleague of Warren's, who was just up here. And I worked in healthcare in this town for 20 years, and then in educating healthcare workers for 11, and just retired in 2019. During that time when I was an educator, I sent students all over northern New Mexico to find different healthcare facilities. And it's not just the senior part of the population that has trouble finding things and gets anxious. I send somebody to Alta Vista Hospital for the very first time, where they don't know how to get there. They don't know who's there and what their experience is going to be like when they get there. And finding it, I got more calls of like, I can't find this place, or a call from the supervisors that they were going to meet there. Your student isn't here yet. So signage, and really good signage, is really important, not just to seniors, but to everybody. And in my years as a respiratory therapist at Christus St. Vincent's, I worked there from when the new hospital was 2 years old. It's in the beginning, people were having trouble finding it because it had moved from downtown, right? And people who come down from Espanola, from Taos, from Raton, and we were sending students to all of those places. First of all, it's a long drive. Secondly, if they can't follow a GPS, then the way our cities are set up now, it's not particularly easy. And I would agree with your first speaker that we really want medical care in northern New Mexico, in all of New Mexico, to improve, and to have physicians that stay because it works here. And that's sadly not currently the case. So the more that we can do to make it work, the better we're off. Everybody in New Mexico will be. Thank you very much.
Please state your name and address for the record and raise your right hand.
Alexandria Visale, I'm the daughter that my dad doesn't want to leave. And my address is 37 Paseo del Angelo, Santa Fe.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury?
I do.
Ms. Beasley has been sworn in, Madam Chair.
Hi, good evening, good afternoon. I'm never quite sure what that time cutoff is. I am very excited because I started my 3rd year of medical school this week at the University of New Mexico School of Medicine. Santa Fe is my home. I love Santa Fe. I decided to stay here to go to college. I went to UNM, and then I only applied to the UNM School of Medicine because I knew where I wanted to study and I knew where I wanted to practice. I am a Santa Fe girl. I put green chili on absolutely everything. So, with that being said, it is a point of discussion at the UNM School of Medicine that many physicians don't come here. And if they do, they don't stay long. There are programs in place at the School of Medicine to try to combat this. But I think we have a solution right here, and in fact, something that we can start. And that's supporting physicians that are here supporting our community. I love Santa Fe, and I really want to stay here, and I want to be an oncologist, and I want to help my community because I love my community. But having support is really what's going to enable me to do that. And that's what my goal is. So we're here talking about a sign, but it's not just about the sign that we're going to put on the building. This is a sign, and it's important to me, but this is a sign to me that representatives and this community want me here. They support physicians. They support incoming new physicians that are excited. I mean, in a year and a half, and then I have to do residency and all of that. But hopefully when I get to that point, we have community support. We have leadership support. This is a sign to me in helping make these signs available to patients, in helping the physicians make a difference in the communities that they want to better. That for me speaks volume. And I just want to emphasize that because I think there's a lot of logistical reasons, but I'm coming more from the idea that I want to be here and I want the support of a community because that's the community that I want to give to. And I hope they can support that. Thank you.
Please raise your right hand, state your name and address for the record.
Nicole McKinney, 1453 Metaceros Loop, Santa Fe.
You solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury?
I do.
Ms. McKinney has been sworn in, Madam Chair.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. My name is Nicole McKinney, and I am the Executive Director for Nexus Health, and I've worked for these providers for over 20 years. I would like to take a moment to emphasize the crucial importance of healthcare wayfinding in our community. Wayfinding refers to the process of orientating oneself and navigation through a physical environment. Wayfinding includes signage, landmarks, maps, and other visual cues that assist our community members in finding their way. As Nexus Health opens its doors on July 22nd of 2024, we will see approximately 100,000 patients in our multi-specialty clinic over the next year. Effective wayfinding has numerous benefits that positively impact the overall experience of our Santa Fe community members, as well as our Northern New Mexico community members. By prioritizing wayfinding, key considerations for approving our sign variants include enhancing accessibility, improving safety and security, fostering a sense of place, and enhancing the patient experience. Over the past 20 years, I have experienced many patients, both from the Santa Fe as well as the Northern New Mexico, that struggle to find provider locations within our Santa Fe community. From wrong turns, misguided GPS, patients and caregivers find themselves turned around and trying to find their way to their providers. Many times in the past, I have found myself and my colleagues meeting patients and caregivers at local landmarks to help guide them where they need to be. These issues increase patients and caregivers' worry, anxiety, and fear during a time that is most often already at a high level. Currently, Nexus Health sits at 1.3 miles away from the Presbyterian Medical Center, surrounded by 60 acres of undeveloped land. This land will not stay undeveloped for long, And soon Nexus will be accompanied by businesses that will support the community it is within. Approving the Nexus Health sign height variance will ensure that the Los Solares development grows, patients, caregivers, and community will continue to find their way, ensuring reduced traffic, congestion, and preventing unnecessary detours and improving accessibility. In conclusion, empowering proper wayfinding is the utmost important to our community, and it improves accessibility, improves safety, and navigation. Thank you.
Please raise your right hand, state your name and address for the record.
In Lehman, 100 Nueva Court in Santa Fe.
You solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury. Mr. Lehman has been sworn in, Madam Chair.
My name is Clifton Kip Lehman. I am one of the oncologists at Nexus Health, but I come to you more as a member of the community because I am employed and not a partner, not an owner yet. I chose the Army for a scholarship for medical school, and through that served as the chief of oncology in El Paso and in Hawaii at Triple Army Medical Center. And I'm not good at this part. I'm normally more humble. The patients, the nurses, they can call me Kip. They don't have to call me doctor, but I was heavily recruited leaving the Army with that level of experience. But I wanted somewhere closer to home. I grew up in a rural community in Indiana, but I fell in love with the Spanish culture. I'm one of the only Spanish-speaking doctors in Nexus. And so I've inherited a lot of the Spanish-speaking patients. And I can tell you, they show up nervous enough as it is when they're new patients. They don't know if somebody's going to be able to speak their language, if it's going to be a video interpreter. All they know is they have cancer and they're terrified. And when I say, we need this test and they say, where will that be? And I can tell them in their language, but to be able to tell them it's the big building with the sign, with the name, will make a big difference. It will help with their wayfinding. And I had a lot more to say about that prepared, but I was kind of motivated by the student doctor who spoke about, this is more than a sign on a building. It's a sign to the community and to the physicians as well. You know, I want to stay here. I love it here. I've fallen in love with this place in the last 2 years. So I don't think you're at risk of losing me by not putting the sign at the right height. But I agree, this is a sign to our patients. This is a sign to the community that, in fact, if the applicant weren't requesting a variance from the city, I would ask that the representatives of the city ask the applicant to do a variance, because we want a sign that shows a beacon of hope to these patients. Where we're going in oncology is remarkable. We do molecular and precision oncology. When I was interviewing here, Dave Snyder, one of the older oncologists who's kind of half retired, he says, he's got a West Texas accent. He said, Kip, I'm 74 years old and people ask me every day, when am I going to retire? And I tell them, I waited my whole life for this. Why would I quit now? And where can you go to get that level of hope from a 70-some-year-old physician who's waited his whole life to be able to provide this kind of care? You can go to Nexus Health, and we should be proud to put a sign high and with appropriate, you know, it's not a huge intensity, but with appropriate visualization, I would be really proud as a member of the city to have that sign on that building. Thank you.
Please raise your right hand, state your name and address for the record. You solemnly swear and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury. He's been sworn in, Madam Chair.
My name is Yemi Antillon, and I proudly serve as the Nexus nurse manager. I have had the privilege of collaborating with these doctors for 17 years. And this team, this dedicated team, healthcare providers, we all share an unwavering commitment to delivering exceptional care to our community. I stand before you today to advocate for simple yet profoundly impactful proposal to have our new multi-specialty medical office building, clinic's name, prominently displayed outside of the 3rd floor. This may seem like a minor detail, but I assure you its significance cannot be overstated, particularly for our diverse patient population. In Santa Fe, and indeed across northern New Mexico, we serve a community that is rich in diversity and culture. Our patient base encompasses individuals from various walks of life, many of whom are elderly and juggling multiple different appointments. have vision impairments, or grappling with the fear and anxiety that often accompanies a health diagnosis, especially cancer. For these individuals, navigating through town to find a medical facility can be daunting, especially if they're already feeling vulnerable and uncertain about their health. By placing our clinic's name on the 3rd floor, we're providing a beacon of reassurance and guidance for those who need it most. Imagine the relief a senior citizen feels when they're running late, driving through town, and see our name clearly displayed, guiding them to the care they need. Or picture the comfort a patient with impaired vision experiences when they easily spot our clinic from a distance, knowing they're headed in the right direction. And consider the peace of mind a person facing a fearful diagnosis finds when they see our name prominently positioned, signaling that help and support are within reach. This isn't just about signage, it's about compassion, accessibility, and it's about ensuring that every member of our community, regardless of age, ability, or circumstance, feels embraced and empowered in the pursuit of medical care. It's about affecting real change in the lives of those who entrust us with their healing and hope. In conclusion, I urge you to consider the profound impact of this seemingly small decision by placing our clinic's name on the 3rd. We're not just enhancing visibility, we're fostering a sense of belonging and security for our patients. We're sending a powerful message that their well-being matters to us, and we're committed to making their healthcare journey as smooth and reassuring as possible. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Please raise your right hand, state your name and address for the record.
Edward Baca, number 5, Monclimaco Court, Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury?
I do.
Sir Baca is sworn, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We finally got a real cancer center in Santa Fe. I'm telling you this because I'm 75 years old, and in my lifetime, I've lost family members and friends to cancer because they did not get the care that they needed. My sister just past December was found with cancer, and it was a trauma for all of us. So we got hooked up with this hospital here, and they have done miracles. I'll tell you right now. Other friends that I've talked to and have given them her situation. How can it be? My husband passed away because of this. My friend passed away because of this and such. These people are taking care of business. Now that said, that's all good and well. One other thing I want to say is we all have these, okay? We Google, where am I going to find this place? We find it real quick in the map. A lot of people coming in from the outer communities, the smaller towns, they don't have that facility. They don't have that know-how. A sign would be just a big help for them to be able to get there and get there on time and find the facility. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public that's present here want to comment? If not, we'll open it up to Zoom, and I see there's 2 hands raised.
Yes, that's correct, Chair Clow. The first hand that is raised is Lisa Schaefer. Ms. Schaefer, you may unmute. Please state your name and address for the record and be prepared to be sworn.
My name is Lisa Schaefer, and my address is 33 Altura Road, Santa Fe, New Mexico, in El Dorado.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury?
Yes, with my right hand raised, I do swear.
Ms. Schaefer has been sworn in, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair and all that are gathered, unfortunately, I can't see you on Zoom, but I thank you for hearing our variance. I would like to say that I am a nurse practitioner for Nexus Health. And oh, there you all are. And I have worked for the doctors at Nexus for 13 years before becoming a nurse practitioner. I am a local New Mexican. I was born in Las Vegas, New Mexico, raised in Santa Fe. I attended UNM, and I've stayed in my community as a nurse. I have a 26-year history of being a nurse here in Santa Fe, in the emergency department at the main hospital. And I would just like to encourage you to consider allowing our sign to be placed on the 3rd level so it is easily seen by all of our clients, not only from the Beckner Road, but from also I-25. It does make it much easier for everyone to find their way. And we'd like to offer proper care to people of northern New Mexico and from the surrounding communities. And we would like our sign to be a beacon so that our patients can easily find their way to us, that it's one less thing that they have to worry about when they have their cancer diagnosis. Thank you for recognizing me.
You. The next person to speak is Ana Maria. And Ana Maria, please state your name and address for the record and then be prepared to be sworn.
So my name is Ana Maria DaCosta. My address is 15 Silver Saddle, Leamy, New Mexico.
You solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury?
I do.
Ms. DaCosta has been sworn in, Madam Chair.
Okay, so I am actually the new radiation oncologist for Nexus. As opposed to some of the other physicians who've spoken today, I am not from New Mexico, but I was drawn here because of the vision of this center in providing accessible, affordable, and quality care. And I think that's something that the people of Santa Fe deserve. I am the radiation oncologist, so my specialty is actually pretty unique in the fact that most of our patients have to drive to and from treatments daily, Monday through Friday for several weeks. I have had patients in previous centers that I've worked at that have actually decided against getting treatment because they were so intimidated by the idea of having to do something like that. With radiation oncology, you know, the centers are few and far between, honestly. So north of us, the closest center is in Pueblo. So we have a large catchment in that region. And a lot of those patients are just intimidated by driving into town, not to mention trying to find a place in town and then find that place daily for several weeks. And you just can't imagine how heartbreaking it is to see a patient have to decline that care and then come back later with incurable disease, simply because of challenges with logistics. I think that it's easy to look at this in black and white and say, these are the rules, this is what we've got to go by. But this is not a black and white situation. This is more gray. We're providing medical care, not, as another speaker said, we're not a burger joint. And the ability of our patients to easily find where we're working is essential. And that will actually make the difference for a lot of patients, honestly, not to sound dramatic, but between life or death. So I really hope that you guys can see how important this is. It seems like a small issue, but it's very important to my patients. So thank you. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom?
Chair Cloud, no one else has their hand raised.
Okay. Anyone else wanting to make a public comment? If not, we'll close the public comment section and we'll open it up for comments or questions by the commission. Commissioner Lawrence.
So this is hard, and I really appreciate first everyone who has been here to speak. And I appreciate everyone who's spoken about the great medical needs related to signage. And I also appreciate the comments that have been made comparing other medical facilities around town, where there have been different signage systems that have been approved. What I'm hearing is that the main potential justification that I'm hearing from the people in the room, the applicant and members of the public, is really though related to the medical use And that concerns me as I look at our criteria that we need to consider within the land use code, which does not really accommodate use as something that can be considered as we consider whether or not a variance can be granted. And I'll say I don't necessarily like that. I would much rather it be clearer that we could say this building is special because it is a medical building, and therefore we can explain how it meets our criteria. But I'm really struggling with how to do that. That is.
Thank you. I've been looking at the criteria, and I think possibly if there's some creativity, that it might be able to work. You know, my comment is if St. Vincent's can increase their height, as was approved by the city council, I think that it's probably worthwhile to try to look at a way to do this. I think what Commissioner Morondo brought up in terms of lighting at night is probably important, to see if maybe we can work something out on that. But I'd like to hear what other commissioners have to say. Commissioner Markey.
The chair and to the public, I do apologize. I had a pre-existing commitment this evening before I got appointed to this commission, and I'm pushing the envelope with some people that are important to me. So I apologize. I do need to leave. I had hoped we could wrap by 7:30.
Do you have any comments you'd like to make first?
You know, I actually, my thinking process on this is more along the lines of the vice chair, and my background is as an attorney. And so I just, you know, I look at this, this is a quasi judicial matter, and our role is to kind of verify that staff have done the correct analysis. We're a check and balance on that. And we didn't write this sign ordinance. We didn't set these limits. The city council did. And those building requirements were established with public input at the time. So there was an entire public input process that went into designing these sign requirements. And so if we go against those, we are really going against what the community said during that process that they wanted. And so if they had wanted to make exceptions for medical facilities, they would have put that in there. So I feel it's not my authority to change the code. And so I would not be supportive of the variance.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Morondo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to have a question of staff, if I could. So my understanding would be a lot has come up in terms of the signage code doesn't really talk about use. Now it does talk about zoning distinction. It's governed by zoning.
Commissioner Morondo, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to note for the record that Commissioner Markey left the room, so we have that in the transcript. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
So it'd be by zoning distinction. There is a zoning distinction that some hospitals and some medical uses are in. There's overlays, right? And there's
I'm sorry. So yeah, Chair Clow and Commissioner Morondo, is your question where are hospitals permitted within the city as a permitted use?
There are, isn't it 2 hospitals that are on an overlay district unique to them?
I believe the Christus St. Vincent campus that is along St. Michael's has an is it an overlay or?
I thought it was an overlay, but.
Or it's its own zone district, maybe. All right, Heather's going to confirm. I think it's its own zone district. It's a
zone
hospital
district, it's basically just
zone. Yes, yes. The property in question is zoned C2, general commercial.
My, yeah.
And Chair Commissioner Miranda, it's the HZ Hospital Zone Districts, and there are two that are designated, and that is Christus St. Vincent as well as the Los Solares Hospital Zone Districts, and the boundaries are defined.
Is there any increase in signage from what we've got here on that zoning? I was just curious.
I don't know, and I'm not sure that it would be relevant to this case.
And there's
Standards, yeah, the standards for the C2 zone are 3 signs, up to 3 signs at a height of 25 feet with 150 square feet, you know, either distributed among those 3 signs or, you know, no sign shall be larger than that. I will check.
Thank you.
I think that's fine, but you need to be sworn in.
Okay, please raise your right hand, state your name and address for the record. You solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury.
So I've represented Christus St. Vincent on occasion over the years. I can tell you it's ironic, but Christus St. Vincent Regional Medical Center is not in the HC zone. It's actually in a C1 zone. You might be surprised to learn that, but that's the truth. The area surrounding the hospital is HC. And while I'm at the podium, I wonder whether you might indulge me to address this issue of structure versus use, because I think that it's an important consideration in this. And Madam Chair, if you may, I'll be brief. So there are situations where use is inseparable from the structure. I'll give you an extreme example, a grain silo, okay? So there's a point at which a structure is designed and built for a particular use, such that the structure itself is inseparable from the use. And that's what we have in this case. We have, as Brian explained, we have a building that was designed specifically only for these types of medical uses that the building will be used for. The same is also true of these other properties where sign variances have been granted. We have the Presbyterian Medical Center. And by the way, people have referred to that building down the road as a hospital. Go online and you'll see that it is called the Presbyterian Medical Center. And if you go online and you look at the multiplicity of services that are provided there, it is not terribly different than what is proposed for this property. The same is true with regard to the Christus Regional Medical Center, where we also see signs that exceed what's permitted by the zoning ordinance. Why? Because that structure is never going to be a hotel. It's never going to be a hot dog stand. It is that structure is inseparable from its use. That's why you can construe the term structure in the code to include use. And so I respectfully submit that that is how this body, as well as the governing body, has interpreted the variance criteria to permit all of the other signage that we have seen that has been approved for these medical facilities. Thank you.
Heather, do you have a comment?
Yes, Chair Clow, thank you. In response to Commissioner Miranda's question, there are criteria in the sign ordinance related to the hospital zone, but it's really only relative to the number of signs, not to the height of signs. So in that particular case, I believe that there are other situations in other jurisdictions as well as this one, where the rationale for having a visible sign related to an emergency room, not necessarily to a medical office. So, thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Question for the applicant.
Commissioner Miranda?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would you be able to pull up your slide where you show the site plan and the adjacent road on both sides on Beckner and I-25?
Get this done.
While this is taking a little time, Madam Chair, if you'd permit me to make a statement, just where I'm going with this, I do feel similarly that this is difficult, but it is fairly clear cut by code. And frankly, the sign ordinance, particularly the size in relationship to building, is really kind of like a third rail for me. I'm more interested in considering the height. Now, that being said, it's not clear to me that the height being requested is actually effective for what it's accomplishing. I know the spirit of it is. I'm actually not convinced from the material and the video presented for me that it will actually make a large impact. The idea of it, I believe, does. I'm not sure in practice, simply because the visibility at any height is not very good. And I might suggest to the applicant that it might actually be more important to focus on wayfinding once you approach the site, which really might come down to adjusting how you're looking at signage and really how you're looking at wayfinding into the site.
Whoops. I'll respond, but I want to make sure that we get you the right diagram. Is this what you're looking for?
Yep.
Commissioner, so I'll just stand by for your question around this, or is that your question?
Can you move on to the elevation illustration where you show each height measured? Maybe even more effective to show the section from the road that you had produced, which is slide 9. Yeah. Slide 8 and 9, I think.
Well, up is better.
Yeah. Well, can you go back to slide 8, actually? Yeah. Thank you. I mean, I think it was clear in the video, but to me, it's also clear here that although it offers some visibility, I don't see it of a level as what's being presented.
So, Commissioner Morondo, one item that I tried to point out, and maybe not very effectively, is that if we look at the upper right-hand corner and you look at the red line as being the section cut, that was specifically chosen as the highest point of the berm running along I-25. So that's about the point, if you remember the video, that you lose the building. And it happens fast, as you know, you're in a car. But prior to that, going southbound, you're basically seeing the two-story form of the building from I-25. It's the northbound side that you see the one-story form, and it doesn't really go away.
It seems to me still from the illustration in the video that you get a sliver of view, then it goes away, and then potentially sliver of one again. So
I can tell you that the approach, like you see the building and the two-story effect that you saw on the approach from the moment you spot the building all the way up into the point until you're right on the building at this line, you can see the building. And that was basically the point I was trying to make. And then more importantly is on the northbound side, you see it all as a one-story form. So again, if the sign is not where we're proposing it to be, you won't see it at all. And it's important to see it, as you know, many have testified. I also, you brought up an idea about, this idea about intensity of development shall not exceed that which is allowed on other properties in the vicinity that are subject to the same relevant provisions of Chapter 14. In our vicinity is PMS and Presbyterian Medical Center, as Frank corrected me, because it has a hospital and office and other services and clinics. And so in our vicinity, these things have been allowed, much more intense, much more grandiose than what we're asking for. And it's not just related to, I heard something about urgent care, emergency. It's not just related to that, because PMS has nothing to do with emergencies. So I just think it was kind of, I think there's a precedent already been set around use in medical services on this scale. And it would just be patently unfair to the applicant, to my client, to allow this to go on with their competitors, but not them.
Appreciated. Thank you for answering my question.
Thank you.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
Anything else?
I should have directed that at you. That's all. Just a statement on that. I suppose I still, despite a very compelling presentation, I don't believe that the height is actually giving the impact of wayfinding as presented. The other statement I would make is, unfortunately, what hasn't brought up is that what's really at issue in this whole presentation, not as much the presentation, but the case, is that this was very much happened because of design decisions, very specific decisions that really put this building where it is. And frankly, I less thought it was about hubris that it seems like the sign was being prepared to be hung, but either a misunderstanding of designing the sign code or something like that. But
it's pretty straightforward, and I'll explain that these are prefabbed walls that all came in at once. If you watch the building go up, it happened very fast. And so some decisions had to be made before it was really known what the signage was even going to look like and be. And so the manufacturer took their best shot at it.
I guess I really do. I feel like this whole issue is really an issue with design of the building, how it's placed on the site. Madam Chair, I'd be ready to make a motion.
I have a question. In terms of the north side of the building, do you still think that there is a visual? I mean, I think you're mainly referring to the south side.
I think you're correct that on the north side, the height makes more of an impact than on the south side. Yes.
Well, before you make a motion, I'll see if anyone else has comment. Commissioner Reland.
Thank you, Chair. Is it possible for the applicant to actually do that, where we could get them to come back and say, we'll allow it on the south side, the I-25 side, whereas we want to keep the code in place on the north side, because that is the neighborhood. As far as that, just curious if the applicant entertained that type of concept.
I'm gonna look back at my client, but I think I know the answer, and the answer is because of the importance of the wayfinding from the Beckner Road side. Because if you look at the sign, and I do want to also, Commissioner Morondo, you had asked about the sign size. The two building signs aren't the issue in terms of going over the area. So the two building signs meet the code, and they're not generous or nearly as large as Presbyterian. And so for that reason, height and visibility is important. That's why we're pushing that direction.
Any other comments, questions? Commissioner McKee.
Thank you. I just want to say I also greatly appreciate the examples of of Presbyterian and others. And it does seem that this has occurred in the past. I appreciate everyone that has come out and provided testimony as well. And I am actually in support of putting the sign on the third floor, and am curious as a new commissioner what it would take to do that.
I have a question of staff, because I don't think any of us were on the planning commission if they approved the St. Vincent sign and Presbyterian. And probably none of you were here either, but does anyone have any like background as to, I mean, those signs are big and you can see them from a long way off, which I believe is important for people that are trying to find medical facilities. And then I have a question of the applicant.
Thank you, Chair Clow. Yeah, I was here for the St. Vincent's Cancer Center, as I think
Yeah,
you
we were all
as well.
here for that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I wasn't here for the other
For the
cases
signage.
that the other comparison cases that you referenced there. I think what the code requires us is to look at this specific lot with these constraints that exist on this lot. And it is not relevant to look at other comparison sites because they each have their own different zoning, their own different physical, characteristics, and they're not comparable to this specific site and this use. So that's staff's position.
Thank you. The question I have is, the size, it seems like if you went down and conformed in size, it would not make the signs that much smaller.
Again, the building signs together are less than the 150 square feet. And the 19 square feet is to try to get the extra monument sign that's down on the street level. So I understand, Madam Chair, that question and that discussion point. It's just difficult. We feel that the building sign, I think if we were going to have to do something, we would have to give up the monument sign, just because the scale is already not working well. It's already too small. And again, if you look at Presbyterian, it's really obvious that is there. It reaches out and it grabs you. That's not what our signs are doing at all. We feel like they're just the minimum of what we need now. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Morondo.
I would just respond that I think there are a lot of ways to look at signage on that site, and I'm really not convinced on the overall presentation of what would be effective. I think it is important. I'm convinced of that. I'm not convinced that what's proposed actually would be. And I would really suggest the applicant, if this doesn't pass, to reconsider that perspective. That maybe 2 building signs in that particular location, giving up those monument signs is really how somebody's going to find that site. And how someone isn't going to get lost, because it's about making one turn, but then it's also about understanding. It's not just about seeing the building from the highway, about getting to the front door.
Any other comments? I mean, I frankly think that the sign in the middle of the building looks ridiculous, but. And in terms of aesthetics.
Those are not the only 2 options, Chair Clow.
We've closed the public comment, so. Okay, someone wants to make a motion?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Morondo.
In case 2024-7750, Meridian Las Solares Medical Center sign area variance, I would make a motion to deny.
Is there a second?
Commissioner McGee,
Yes.
Commissioner Reland,
No.
Commissioner, right, he's not here. Commissioner Lucero,
No.
Commissioner Morondo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lawrence, motion passes.
Second motion? There's two matters.
Just, Madam Chair, my own, I guess, clarification in terms of answers on that motion of yes or no. The motion passed. Yeah.
Did you not?
deny. There were yes and no's indicating the same thing, so. No. Perhaps I'm confused and no.
There was one yes and 4 no's. But there's two different motions. So I thought you just made it for the matter 7750.
Madam Chair, staff can confirm, but I believe that was just B to vote. Therefore, the variance.
Yes.
So essentially what I'm asking is when I make this motion, a affirmative would be supporting the motion. Would it not? Would it not?
Tonight, yes, yes.
Thank you. In case 2024-7751, Meridian Las Solares Medical Center sign height variance, I'd like to make a motion to deny.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Lucero,
No.
Commissioner Morondo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lawrence, Commissioner McGee,
No.
and Commissioner Reland.
You asked Commissioner Whelan twice.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And you missed Lucero? No? Okay,
No.
sorry. I didn't hear Commissioner Lucero's vote.
You need affirmative.
Motion fails.
So we need another motion, or what was the vote on that?
3-2.
3-2.
It was 3-2. No from Commissioner McGee, no from Commissioner Reland, no from Lucero, yes from Commissioner Morondo, and yes from Vice Chair Lawrence.
Now need a motion to approve case number 2024-7751. Commissioner Lucero?
Yes, thanks, Chair. I'd like to make it a motion to approve case 2024-7751, the Meridian Las Solares Medical Center height variance. Motion to approve.
And Chair Clow, Commissioner Lucero, if I could respectfully suggest in the motion to approve that you note which approval criteria for the variances were met, so that we can have a clear record and understand what the factual findings of the commission were this evening.
And I would suggest that it be the applicant's findings.
And that certainly is an option. So if you are adopting the findings of the applicants, I would respectfully suggest making a record of that.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve case 2024-7751, Meridian Los Solares Medical Center, the sign height variance in consideration of the applicant's presentation this evening.
Is there a second?
A second.
Vice Chair Lawrence?
No.
Commissioner McGee?
Yes.
Commissioner Reland? Commissioner Lucero?
Yes.
Commissioner Morondo?
No.
Motion passes 3-2.
Thank you. Staff communications.
Chair Clow, the only staff communications we have for this evening is that on Monday, the 10th of June, we will be holding a mini conference for the community that's called Built for the Future. And we will be having a guest speaker, Matt Goebel, to bring information to the construction community and the community at large about the status of our zoning code update, as well as we're going to have breakout sessions so that we can get feedback from the community on processes. We're going to provide updates on processes and projects with the land use department. So that includes construction, building permitting, as well as planning. And we are fortunate enough to have Commissioner Morondo also as a speaker. So we are really excited about the opportunity to have this engagement with the community, and we'll report back how things went. But you can still register. You can go to the city's website, look for Built for the Future, and you can still register for the meeting or the conference. And that is all.
Is there a problem with Open Meetings Act? Everyone wanted to attend from the Planning Commission? Probably not, right?
As long as there's no discussion of public business.
If I may, we may still need a notice for a quorum.
We don't technically need a notice for a quorum as long as there's no discussion of public business, but Mr. Vigil makes a good point that it may be in the interest of appearances to issue a notice if there's going to be a quorum.
Madam Chair? I mean, I guess my thinking on that is a notice of quorum would imply that we're talking about public business when we're not to be. So I would think it wouldn't be needed, but not for me to say, I guess.
Respectfully, my suggestion would just be to avoid discussion of public business at that event.
I would
Yes.
Okay, any matters from the commission?
Madam Chair. The issue of what's happened before, let's say precedent in other cases, rulings has come up a bit more and more, but particularly in this. And at least from an applicant side of things, I always had a specific way of looking at that. But I think it might be interesting to have maybe that addressed by staff to the commission at some point, because it's not defined really in the code how we would look at that. I had my own way of looking at it as an applicant and it's a tool at my disposal to try to persuade someone. But from chapter 14's perspective, it doesn't, I don't believe, doesn't necessarily mean anything other than it's something that happened.
Right. And I think that it's probably best never to grant a variance, because if you do, it's always going to be precedent for another one. But sort of the reality of life. I mean, it probably doesn't apply. Every case is individually, but I'm curious as to how it's occurred in other situations.
Yeah.
And also, and that's something I think that the commission and council needs to look at. I mean, if you do it for one, how can you not do it for others? It becomes problematic, and that's why we normally don't look favorably on variances.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
But I think that would be a good presentation from probably legal.
Certainly, yeah, we'd be happy to do something like that.
And Chair Clow, if I may, it's a little bit in that vein, Commissioner Miranda, but I wanted to address the notion that structures are the same as uses. And I think that was not accurate. When specifically, if you look at the variance section of code, the purpose is to provide, and you may grant variances to the size, location, and appearance of structures, to the location and extent of open space, the extent of grading, a 30% slope variance, for example, the width and configuration of public and private roads, we see those, driveways and trails, and to similar standards for development established by this chapter. However, a variance shall not be granted to provisions that restrict the type or intensity of principal or accessory uses that are permitted within a district, including limits on maximum residential density. So we should not be considering uses when we're considering variances. And so I just wanted to reiterate that point. And I tried to make that in my presentation to tonight. I think that also within the variance criteria, it asks us to consider, the specific parcel in question and not consider, other parcels that were granted variances under separate situations. Every piece of land is unique. And so that is how we approach the analysis of a variance. If you had a piece of land that, as I mentioned, only had 30% slopes, that development of that property, assuming it was a legal lot that was formed and approved by the city, would require a variance to develop. They wouldn't get a variance to develop necessarily, but we would recommend approval because the only way to develop that lot would be to disturb 30% slopes. So that's a rather extreme version, but I think it gives you a little bit of context around what might warrant a variance approval from staff. Generally, you will see a recommendation to deny from our office for these very strict reasons that the code requires of us.
Now, criteria 3, though, says the intensity of the development shall not exceed that which is allowed on other properties in the vicinity that are subject to the same relevant provisions of Chapter 14. And I don't know if that would imply that when other variances are allowed for medical facilities, that it would fit under, if 2 variants have been allowed for St. Vincent's Medical Facility and for Presbyterian, which is right down the street from them, would that criteria come into play?
It is my position that it does not. This intensity of the signs in this instance is governed by the sign code. And those other properties in the vicinity are subject to those same relevant standards. That they were granted a variance is a separate issue.
You'd narrowly construed. that.
Yes, yeah.
As staff, aren't you guys kind of leaving yourself as legally liable though by denying a business your proper representation by signing? If it's already been precedent by another company and another firm?
No, I think this conversation's gone on for a few minutes now, but we haven't noticed a separate topic, and so I would suggest at this point that we go ahead and adjourn.
Chair Cloud, just
Heather,
one
yes.
unrelated announcement that I forgot to make is that the contract for the general plan update was approved by the governing body. And so we are in the process of issuing a purchase order to WESP USA, which they were the ones that won the contract. They're working with Design Workshop, so they have offices in New Mexico. It is a national company, but Design Workshop also has been involved with a lot of our other planning and is very familiar with our community. We're hoping to kick off the digital platform component as well as the background research, but we also have some kickoff briefings and updates to the Planning Commission to give, and you could probably expect that in July or in August. But good news all around, for sure.
We're moving forward. Okay, anything from the commission? No. Anything else? If not, we'll adjourn.